All right, we are all here. Hey everyone, my name is HD Harmsen, and I'm a local songwriter, educator, and co-founder of the Lantern Cinema here in Des Moines, Iowa. I've recently started a new series called HD Harmsen Presents, where I get to bring stories and artists I care deeply about directly to our community. And I'm proud to say our very first outing is Arcades and Love Songs, The Ballad of Walter Day. Tonight, I'm joined by three people who each play a huge part of that story. First, we have Ed Cunningham, who came from the world of sports and sports broadcasting and has become one of the most respected documentary storytellers working today. He produced the infamous film The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, and the Oscar award-winning Undefeated. And now he makes his directorial debut with Arcades and Love Songs, The Ballad of Walter Day. We're also joined right here in the flesh by Walter Day, a true American original, founder of Twin Galaxies, pioneer of competitive gaming, and one of Iowa's most fascinating creative spirits. Beyond being the godfather of esports, Walter has lived a remarkable life as a musician, historian, trading card creator, and archivist. And this film captures a new chapter of his journey as an incredible Iowa musician. And we're going to be taking it out of Iowa to the rest of the world. And finally, we have Steve Wiebe, one of the greatest Donkey Kong players of all time, a world record holder, a teacher, a musician, and someone whose quiet perseverance has inspired millions of people around the world. His story is a reminder that dedication and heart matter just as much as a victory. I'm honored to have all three of these people here tonight as we dive into the worlds of creativity, competition, and the strange, beautiful landscape that brought this film to life. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, Howard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to see everyone. I'm going to go ahead and start this off. This question is directed to all three of you. I'd be curious to hear with anyone who has an answer. Why Iowa? Why was Iowa the right home for this story? The people, the spirit, and the roots. And of course, I'm talking about Arcades and Love Songs, The Ballad of Walter Day.
Well, I guess
Go
I
ahead,
can
Ed.
start since I'm the one who decided to film in Iowa. We had first filmed in Iowa way back in 2004. So it's been over 20 years when we filmed for The King of Kong with Walter. And, it would take a couple hours to go through the history of what happened from then till now. But suffice it to say, King of Kong became a cult classic. People loved it. And there was some controversy that came about that pulled Walter in. And while I was trying to help Walter figure out this lawsuit, this frivolous lawsuit that he got pulled into, I got word that some real big fans of the King of Kong had run into Walter at a convention. And in the King of Kong, we have a scene where Walter is talking about quitting being the referee of video games and becoming an artist, a musician for these songs he's been hearing in his head for so many years. And this group, games called Color Switch, they're a mobile app game development company. They paid for him to have his album recorded in Iowa by a really great producer and engineer there. And so we really didn't have a choice in the location because that's where Walter was, that's where the story was. And I think going back for me to Iowa, because it had been a while since we'd filmed there for King of Kong, it's such a beautiful place. It's so appealing looking. The people are incredible. Everyone is so warm. You get the real Midwest vibes in Iowa. And so for us, filming in Iowa was, it was part of the story. But for me, it's just such a beautiful place. It's such a good mixture of America. There's a lot of conservatives, there's a lot of liberals, there's a lot of artists, there's a lot of farmers. It's just a mashup of really what this country's all about. And I find it beautiful. I love being in Iowa. I think it's such a peaceful, lovely place. So the story was there, so we went and filmed there. We filmed in Fairfield. We filmed in Marshalltown at Marshalltown Community College. Cedar Falls, where he recorded his album, we filmed in. So we were sort of bouncing all over the state, and it really turned out well. Iowa's just such a lovely backdrop for this movie.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to say too, that was how I kind of got introduced in The King of Kong initially. Of course, I was a big fan of that film, but I remember seeing all this stuff of Walter and Fairfield and being a lifelong Iowan. It was just fascinating to see it. And I was so happy when the second film came out because I'd always heard there was going to be a sequel and I was always thinking it was just going to be, just some telling of what had previously happened or what's happened since, but the fact that it's all about music and it happens in Fairfield, which for anyone that's ever been to Iowa, Fairfield is a very cool, interesting place. And Walter has a long, storied career in Iowa, being a TM meditator. Walter, what was it initially that brought you to Iowa? Was it the Maharishi and TM?
Well, exactly. I don't know how far you want me to to elaborate on all this because it is a big story. That's a long story that may not be effective our
The purpose, yes.
for a purpose right here, right now. But essentially, back in the old days, back when I was a hippie in the drug taking days, I found myself faced with fatigue, backaches, headaches, migraines, low energy level, bad digestion. Everything was going wrong. And someone I ran into who had the same symptoms said they had learned something called TM and all those symptoms went away. So I learned TM and all those symptoms went away. And my head became so much clearer. My mind became so much more awake and alert. I thought, my God, I have to learn more about this. So I actually became a TM teacher decades ago. And when Fairfield, Iowa became the site of the Maharishi International University, I moved here to be part of some advanced programs they had that when you practice the advanced programs, it helps develop the release of it just helps you release stress so that your head becomes clearer, your body becomes healthier. And so that led to me moving to Fairfield, Iowa, where I've been now for 46 years.
Yes, and I've had the privilege of spending some time with Walter. Walter seems quintessentially Iowan to me. I know he grew
Yep.
up in California and he's lived on the East Coast, but he very much feels like an Iowan. So very happy to have you. And guys, I'm very pleased to see that the production company for this film was Fairfield Films. Very cool. So this one is directed to all, but I think I actually might go ahead and give it to Steve because we've yet to hear from him. So, you have all lived in a world that blends competition, creativity, and community. Why do you think stories like this about dreamers and outliers continue to resonate so deeply with audiences? And Steve, with you being one of the main subjects in the previous film, King of Kong, you don't look like, I suppose, our typical movie star kind of personality. I think you kind of stand in for kind of that everyman, kind of person. What do you think it is about a story like this that speaks to so many people?
Um, well, thanks for having me on. And I think it just is true for everybody. A lot of people have some passion or desire or some work that they aren't can't achieve. Like they're the starving artist or they're trying to make it in show business. And, then they have to do another job that's not quite their passion. So I think it's people on a level where they dreamt about whatever occupation when they were a kid. I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be whatever I want to be. And so I think with the dreams of being a musician, both Walter and I share is something that a lot of people have in common. Maybe not being a musician, but some other dream they had growing up, and they never got a chance to realize it. So I think that speaks to everybody.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I do think that is something that speaks to everyone involved with this. And I think it's a big part of why this story has touched the hearts of so many people over the years. And as Ed was saying, it kind of sounds like there was some backlash or, some different things that kind of came from King of Kong. But it is pretty exciting to see how there's even people like me in Iowa that kind of, whatever, I could see the controversy that existed. However, there was something about the heart of the individuals that spoke so much to me. So I hope that's a something of encouragement for everyone on here that, there's a lot of good that I think came from this film. And even the fact that we're here today talking and putting together these awesome events here in Iowa speaks a lot to that. So next, I want to go over to Walter. Walter, you've lived 1,000 lives, oil trader, collector, psychedelic musician. and founder of Twin Galaxies. What was it about a video games that first hooked you, and when did you know there was something truly worth studying there?
Um, I was an oil broker in Houston, Texas, and this also could be a long story, so I'll try not to make it long. I was an oil broker in Houston, Texas, and the oil brokerage job was not going too well. And so I got a partner to join me in a business venture to create an actual reference library book that we'd sell to America's 40,000 libraries. It was a reference book called Days, Who's Who in the Petroleum Industry. And we actually got response. And 132 significant oil executives all sent us their biographies. And we were working on it and putting it in the book pages so that we could actually publish the book. And one night, the person who was my partner said, I can't do this anymore. I got to go out and play Space Invaders. And I had never heard of Space Invaders. This is June of 1980. And so I said, what's Space Invaders? He took me to an arcade, and I was intrigued. I was intrigued by video game players because it was so much fun to play video games, but to me, it was more intriguing to watch the people who were real good and see the crowds gathering around them, watching them show off their skill set. And I realized right then and there that some people had just eye-hand coordination, mind-body coordination, fast reaction time, and just some unfathomable level of deep inner comprehensive thinking that allowed them to be superior. And because I had been involved with the Transcendental Meditation movement, who has studied skill and action and on unfolding your full mental potential, I already had a connection with the idea of unfolding your full potential. And I was intrigued by what potential these top video game players were unfolding and manifesting. So I became immediately interested in monitoring and paying attention to the people who were the champions. So the spiritual groundwork for eventually the Twin Galaxy scoreboard was already in operation in my psychology.
That is incredible, Walter. That's amazing. So you mentioned Space Invaders being the first one that you kind of had heard about, or it kind of coming to your preview of something to consider. Was there a lightning moment for you as a gamer where you played something and you were like, I can't stop playing this. I see the future, and the future is this game. Did you have
Well,
something like that?
I started playing Space Invaders and I immediately fell in love with it and started playing Space Invaders a couple times a week. And then I discovered Pac-Man and Centipede and other games, and it became a passion. I wouldn't say I was addicted, that's not the right word, but I became very passionate about playing video games. And when I traveled the nation working as a old newspaper salesman, I would stop at every arcade I could and play the games there and also start monitoring the scores. So I started taking notes and noting the high score in this game, the high score in that game, noting if this was the highest score I ever saw on this game and so forth and so on. And it became of such interest to me that I actually went way out of my way once because I heard rumors of Pac-Man, of players who could play Pac-Man at greater scores than anybody else in the world. And so I actually went on a pilgrimage to find them. I may have been the first person in history to actually go on a pilgrimage to find a great video game player.
Amazing.
And because, they have that concept in movies, but I
Yeah.
actually did it. I actually did it many, many years before any of those movies came out.
Well, that's amazing. Well, and Ed Cunningham here, he kind of comes from the world originally of, I guess I could say athletics and certainly sports broadcasting. Ed, for you, did you immediately find a continuity between the idea of, athletics as you would think of them typically? Did you find a continuity between that spirit and the competitive nature of video games? Steve, that question could be directed to you as well, because I know you both you love sports and you grew up playing baseball and basketball and all that stuff. I'll start with Ed and then we'll go over to Steve.
Yeah, I very when we started making The King of Kong, we immediately saw it as a sports movie. I mean, that was we just, that was an easy way to sort of frame it for me because that was my background at the time. I was calling college football games on ABC and ESPN. And so it was really a very kind of an easy way to look at the gaming world. Like, oh, this is sports. This is competition. There is a lot of skill involved. There's a lot of practice. There's a lot of time. There's a certain level of player that is just a cut above other players. And so it really fit perfectly well into my background in the world of sports. And I think, one of the things when we were filming The King of Kong is we always wanted to find a title that had at least two players going for high scores. Because the one thing we did realize was it is very hard to show a non-video game fan or video game fanatic how good, what their skills like and how good are they. And so we always were looking for, and I think, Walter, you probably remember this when we did that event in Florida, which is at the end of King of Kong, we only had titles in that competition where there were two or more players going for a world record because we felt like that was going to be an easier way for the audience to grasp the stakes, the level that they cared. Because if it's just man against the machine, we felt like that might not be as a relatable story. So that was one of the big choices we made in King of Kong, was looking for titles that more than one player had the skills to break the world record. And then when Walter got this really historic call, and we were lucky enough to be there when he got the voicemail and called the guy back, and it was when Guinness World Records, who back in the 80s Walter had supplied scores for, but this was 2004, and they said, hey, we want to bring back video game records. Can you provide us with some records? And so this event in Florida was to see sort of a last minute, can you break a world record to get into the new edition of the Guinness Book of World Records. And so for us, it really raised the stakes quite a bit, because when something like Guinness of World Records says the scores matter, then they added a lot of weight and a lot of stakes to the end of that movie.
Yes.
I want to interject something. There was a dynamic that continued through King of Kong into Arcades and Love Songs. There were different dynamics, like Amber Lathers being suddenly the champion on Mario Kart, which was completely something that couldn't be counted on ahead of time and expected. It was just completely a gift, almost like a gift.
Beautiful part.
Yeah. And then Shane being so unbelievable, essentially making the movie what it is. That was something that couldn't be guessed ahead of time. But that same almost like spiritual phenomena was completely active in the King of Kong when suddenly Ed and Seth are in my room when a call comes in from the Guinness. It was like a gift from heaven that could never have been expected or counted on or even believed would happen. It was an amazing process, wasn't it, Ed?
Yes, it was. That was an incredible day when you got that call from Guinness.
It was like the whole project all the way through both films were almost like blessed by some energy.
And one of the brilliant things about that film too is like, you can tell the magic of filmmaking takes place because right after that call happens, I think Walter looks at the camera and says, "You just caught a big moment of Twin Galaxies history." I mean, that whole thing is very cool. And for King of Kong fans, I've had to go back and watch these films quite a bit. Ed Cunningham is the voice that actually tells Steve Wiebe that the Guinness Book of World Records is actually happening. And then Steve has that wonderful moment where he says, "Is that true?" All of that is just so awesome. So when everyone watches this, go back and watch The King of Kong, and you're going to hear Ed Cunningham all over that film, which is really exciting.
I think he says, "Is that truthful?" Isn't that what he
Yeah,
said?
that's right. What was that moment like for you, Steve, when that happened? Was it just like, oh my gosh, I got to do this again?
Yes, I was in disbelief because those words came out kind of awkwardly. Like, is that truthful? Is that the truth? I don't, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know why I was so flustered there. But anyway, it was great to hear that I had another chance because I got a good score at Fun Spot, of course, but I didn't get what I could have scored ultimately. But hearing that I had another opportunity to go for this thing in Florida definitely inspired me at the time.
Yeah. Well, and the film does such an amazing job just showing all the different facets to your own life and mind and the things that you're interested in. But for those who haven't seen the film, Steve is a gifted musician. He's a gifted athlete. He composed a lot of the music for King of Kong. He's a teacher. He's an incredible mentor to a lot of young people, a coach, all of these things. So, Steve, for you, being a musician myself, I can understand the eye-hand coordination aspects that come with playing video games and these classic arcade games specifically. But tell us a little bit about your classic arcade journey. Was it just one of those things that you got in touch with in the 80s and it just captured your imagination, like Ed and Walter has said previously?
Yeah, it was pretty much if you had to be living under a rock to not know about video games. When you're whatever 10 years old when they hit the arcades, I was born in 69, so like when Pac-Man came out in 80, I was 11. That's right in the wheelhouse of being interested in video games. So that was a big time when BMX bikes were around too. Like we'd hop on our BMX bikes and head off to the arcades and hang out with our friends. We were still doing sports and everything too, but we had that side of us where it was a very social event. So yeah, I was hooked with video games. They called me a video game addict. So when I played for long hours, my eyes would glaze over and they kind of thought I was stoned on video games. Kind of funny. But on my side, I got along still and did all my homework, but definitely had this thing for video games, and it carried into when I learned about Donkey Kong when that came out in 81. I definitely fell in love with that. Pac-Man was good, but when I saw Donkey Kong, that was the deal there. And I was pretty good back in the 80s. I got like 200,000, but when I got my own machine in my college days, that's when my score started getting really high up there and hit that kill screen unknowingly. I back in 1990, and
Wow.
Twin existed back then, but unless you were part of the core gamers, you didn't know about the scoreboard. It wasn't an internet thing yet, so I was left in the dark knowing what the high scores were in, but I was like in the 900,000s 1990, and I got to that screen and Mario died, and I thought my game had a bug in it, which it does, but I thought my game was defective and or invisible barrel. I thought maybe this level is where you have to just know when I jump in one time when the screen started, but that didn't work. So and then from there I had sold the machine and then I got back into it later, and then basically that's King of Kong takes up after I buy my new machine and start playing again.
Yeah, well, and your level of commitment and your decency that you exhibited throughout that film and just the being the person that you are is very cool and inspiring. So awesome. Thank you for all that, Steve. Walter, I want to ask you this question, and actually this is going to kind of go back to what Ed was saying. In the King of Kong film, a big part of that is, Walter is saying that this part of my life I'm ready to give up. This idea of Twin Galaxies, it no longer belongs to me. Maybe I started it, but it's someone else's baby now. Walter, for you, I feel like in that film, when they're showing the music, of course, it's a big part of who you are, but I don't know if you could have guessed from the first film that the sequel would be all about Walter's music necessarily. It just seems to be one more interesting piece of it. When was the exact moment for you when you realized, you know what? It's all about music. I want to get to my music. What was that moment for you? And, what was it that gave you the confidence to kind of come to that decision?
Well, of course, David Reichelt and Chris Reichelt from Color Switch, which is based in Simi Valley, California. Uh, they brought a lot of energy to the table. I was going through a lot of I was sort of emotionally and psychologically and and the passion for the movie for the music, the passion remained there, but I was beginning to lose faith that it was ever going to happen. Lose faith, and suddenly out of the clear blue, Chris and David Reichelt came forward and said, "Look, we want to pay back. We want to honor you for all that you've done for the video game industry. So we have the resources available that could allow you to actually publish your first album, and it'll be a gift to you, no strings attached. If it ever makes any money, it's all for you." And so when that surprise when that surprise intervention happened of their intention and their energy and their money, it completely re-inspired me because my inspiration was beginning to fade because I thought, well, I'm getting my 70s. Looks like it's not going to happen because there were just too many things that were obstacles psychologically, emotionally, and financially and physically to me that interfered with me being able to focus. Once I had them guarding my back, I was able to focus and actually start working on my voice and actually finish the lyrics. One thing that I found as a problem is that I could never really focus on finishing lyrics because my attention was too divided. I was just not steady. But the steadiness came from the confidence I got from them supporting me. I hope this makes sense, but this essentially is what happened.
Well, it's the
It completely transformed the process the creative outflowing of lyrics and music and actually getting myself up to do it.
Yeah. Well, and you've spent so many years encouraging others, to have someone come and offer that support and encouragement for you on something so personal. And for those who haven't seen the film yet, which I encourage everyone to do, Arcades and Love Songs is all about Walter actually taking it upon himself to get his music officially recorded in I believe it was in 1986, Walter.
1986 is when I first started hearing it, January of 86.
Yeah, so Walter had his heart broken by one of the subjects of the film, whose name is Shane Harris, who's a wonderful person and woman. And essentially, he had all of these songs, as he describes, he listened to them for the first time. It was like it came from out in the ether. He had his songs just come to him and be presented. And this film is an exploration of how that process came. Now, for Ed, I have a question for you. In King of Kong, and I mean this, I suppose, playfully, originally, did you take the music as seriously as you did in the second film?
That's a good question. We found Walter fascinating. Here was this guy who had done all of these things in his life, including just having the foresight to see video games for what they were, which is, they could be high level competition. But clearly, when we started visiting with him and interviewing him, the music just kept coming up and coming up and coming up. So it was something that was clearly boiling up in him. But I think what got me, and the reason I think we included the section in The King of Kong where he plays a song for us and talks about how he doesn't want to be the referee anymore, he wants to get to his music's really good. He's a great songwriter, tons of hooks, interesting chord progressions, completely memorable. You can hear some of his songs once or, maybe twice, and you can hum the harmony. You can sing along to the chorus. And I think, had it not been, if Walter wasn't a good songwriter, if we heard his music and it wasn't good, wasn't memorable, kind of embarrassing, maybe we don't even include that scene in King of Kong. But I certainly wouldn't have spent, I've been working on this movie now since 2022, Arcades and Love Songs, when we started filming, still out promoting it, still coming to Iowa to show it in Des Moines, Marshalltown, and Fairfield next week. I wouldn't have made this movie if I didn't love his music. I just really love it. I think he's a great songwriter, very soulful singer. And it's clear that, and his music's out. It's out on all the streaming services. It's available on our website, arcadesandlovesongs.com. But for me, if his music wasn't great and memorable, I don't think we would have included that much. And I definitely wouldn't have made this movie, which is all about his music, if his music wasn't, in my opinion, really good and fun to listen to and memorable.
It's incredible. I personally believe it's one of the best records that's ever been released out of Iowa. And from coming from here, that's kind of saying a lot. Now, Steve, we've talked about you being a musician as well. You know, in the first film, obviously, it looks like you guys interface, a small amount. It doesn't look like you guys were necessarily best friends in that film. However, was it King of Kong when you first became aware that Walter was kind of this incredible, uh, Rodriguez style singer-songwriter making all this amazing music? Did you have any idea about that?
I had no idea. And in fact, Ed was the one that pointed it out to me and said, hey, there's parallel with you and Walter, how you both have aspirations of music, have these dreams of being a musician. And I thought that was pretty weird that behind all of this, we both shared that interest. So there was something magical there as well. Like Walter said, there's something special that was happening through these films. So that element was really fascinating. It blew me away. Like, what, this guy was writing music too, and the fact that he heard songs in his head, that's how I hear them. But it didn't come on suddenly. I've been like wanting to do this for like when I was like 6 years old. I was always trying to write songs and played drums when I was really young. And but I also heard another person this happened to, Mary Steenburgen, when I was, just to kind of go off a little bit of tangent, but when I was at the Four Christmases, when we're, because of the King of Kong, I got, invited to some of these movies that Seth was working on. And Mary Steenburgen had the same thing happen to her, where she just started hearing these songs in her head, and just like these orchestrations come in, and she had some people that helped her get her music down. And I think she ended up being a songwriter in Nashville, part time, like whatever, not part time, but she's an actress, of course, but she also like co-wrote some songs in country in Nashville. So I've heard of this happening to people. So that's awesome that Walter got this cool, whatever, wherever this music comes from. I'm glad that he received it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and
Hey,
Steve,
real quick,
yeah,
Howard, you just got 5 minutes left
yeah.
because I'm on the basic plan here. Yeah.
Yep. I just wanted to say for Steve, in the first film, they talk about, you get to see you play drums and it's so amazing. And in the second film, there's this wonderful moment where you're kind of saying to Walter, like, oh, maybe I can come play drums with you. Now, I have to say, Des Moines, so we're having three shows here in Iowa. We have one in Marshalltown, we have one in Des Moines, which is on the 22nd, and then the next night is in Fairfield. Is it the 20th for Marshalltown? Ed, I want to
20th.
make sure.
Yep. Thursday the 20th in
Yeah.
Marshalltown, 22nd in Des Moines at Lefties. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I wanted to say is I want to humble brag that Des Moines gets that moment is going to take place in Des Moines for the first time. Steve Wiebe is going to be playing drums for Walter Day as Walter sings Hold Me, which is such a fantastic song. And I'm so proud of Des Moines that we get that moment. And I'm so happy this creative kind of thing is happening together. So with that, Ed, Ed's done a pretty remarkable thing. He's actually found a way to bridge both worlds, the Arcades and Love Songs world and the King of Kong world. We'll call it the full King of Kong metaverse. But Ed has essentially been working on putting together, I think he said it colloquially as, a jukebox musical, but this is going to be a 30-minute, exploration of both of the films, and then there's going to be live performances. Ed, do you want to tell us what we can expect to see on Saturday and Sunday in Des Moines at Fairfield?
Yeah. This just came to me actually while we were editing this film, Arcades and Love Songs. It just came to me that, here we have multiple people in both films who are really great musicians. First film, we had Steve Wiebe and Walter Day. In this film, we have Doug Dowler, who's from Fairfield, Jenny Sammons, who's a singer from Fairfield, Tim Britton, who's a engineer, producer, musician. These people are all in the film. And so I just took songs from each film, including Steve Wiebe's going to do his famous drum solo from The King of Kong. But I just saw it as an opportunity to get up on stage and just do it for real. Have these people who've been playing on these films, have them play in real life. And so I strung a little story together that I tell, show some clips from the movies, have Walter play, have Steve play, have Doug, have Jenny. And then the very end of it, they're all going to come together. And Shane Harris, who is the muse who originally started all this for Walter, she's going to be there and sing along with Walter in a duet of that song "Hold Me," which ends Arcades and Love Songs in the film. So it just seemed like a great opportunity. And Howard, I'll give you some credit. You were the one who called and said, "Hey, I want to do an event here," and you just threw a softball question of, "Is there anything musical we can do?" And it was like, the light bulb went off in my head. And I said, well, it's funny you say that because I've been working on this jukebox musical, which it just means you take songs from movies or from stars and play them. So I give you a lot of credit for sort of giving us the impetus to go ahead and play this. And I'm so excited to be able to play it. We're going to play it in Des Moines on that Saturday. And then in Fairfield, we're going to play the musical again after Arcades and Love Songs.
Yeah, so hey, for everyone here, King Kong fans, Arcades and Love Songs fans, these are just warm-up shows. Soon these will, hopefully we can, there can be more of these that happen across the country. We'll have to see what happens with everything. But listen, I want each one of you to leave us with one final thing upon leaving. I want you to answer this question. Just answer it, just one sentence. What is it that you want people to feel when they leave? The classic Arcades and Love Songs screening experience? What is it that you want them to feel? We'll start with you, Walter.
Oh, just happiness.
Great.
For me, it's inspiration. It's never too late. If you have a dream, go for it. And the other part too, I think for Walter is support of your community. It's a really beautiful thing at the end of Arcades and Love Songs when the community comes together and supports Walter. It's really beautiful.
All right, Steve, final word.
Believe that your dreams can come true. I know that's kind of cliche, and everyone who gets their dream to come true, hey, just believe, but I think you got to be persistent, and things can happen when you least expect them.
I like that, Steve. That's a good one.
Great. Thank you guys all so much for your time. We have the Arcades and Love Songs, Ballad of Walter Day shows in Iowa, those three locations, Marshalltown, Des Moines, and Fairfield.